It is what looks like economic terminology, isn't it? Fiscal headroom. But actually, this issue is one of the biggest ones facing UK politics. It's what determines whether Jeremy Hunt says he's got more money to spend on tax cuts. It's what determines whether the Labour Party can do a lot of their investment spending in future, raising a question. What is fiscal headroom anyway? Well, let me just explain it to you, because it comes back to something quite simple. The government's got various different fiscal rules kind of constraining how much they can spend and borrow in the future. And one of them comes back to this, the national debt. This is the size of the national debt as a percentage of GDP. And one of those rules says they need to try to ensure the national debt is falling over a 5-year horizon. So not immediately, but in 5 years' time. And if we actually just zoom in on this chart, you can see, let's zoom in, have a look, you can see it is just about falling. So 2027 to 28, it's 94.9% of GDP, and then it comes down a little bit to 94.4% of GDP in 2028-29. What is that? Well, if you look at the gap between those two things, that's the fiscal headroom. That is when people talk about fiscal headroom, it's all about this. And if we take that box and just work out how big that actually is, so put it over there, what is it? It's £13 billion. So right now, £13 billion. But there's a couple of things to note here. First of all, it all comes back to that fiscal rule. It's not like there's an economic law that says you have to obey that. Secondly, this kind of yo-yos quite a lot, OK? So right now, it's £13 billion, but about 12 months ago, we thought it was about £6 billion. So there it is, last March, £6 billion. And then what happened later on? Well, you had all sorts of things going on. You had the economy doing a bit better than expected. You had tax receipts coming in higher than expected. Stronger public finances pushed that up. Also, you had an extra year to play with on that particular rule. Remember, it's 5 years in the future that you need to be cutting the national debt. And the upshot of all of that is that come the autumn statement that we've just had, Jeremy Hunt didn't have 6, he had £31 billion to play with. That was headroom. You see how headroom can go up and down quite quickly. And, of course, he spent a lot of it. He did £18 billion worth of tax cuts on national insurance. And there we are now. So that's the £13 billion of supposed kind of monolithic headroom that we're facing when it comes up to this budget. But it's worth saying that we've just had numbers through from the ONS saying that, look, debt interest payments are going down, the public finances, the borrowing levels are going down lower than expected. And the upshot of all of that is when we go back to that headroom, it might actually end up being a bit higher than that. Some people think maybe £10 billion higher than that, meaning that this is potentially the money that Jeremy Hunt could have to play with. That's the headroom, potentially. And, of course, that raises the question, if he spends all of that, is there anything left for Rachel Reeves? Because she said she's going to obey those fiscal rules anyway. And that raises another question. Is it really right, some would say, for the entire economy to be hinged on this little gap between one number and another? Every party is agreeing to that so far in Westminster. A lot of economists wonder whether fiscal headroom really is the religion we should all be following.